All right.
Hey, welcome everybody. Glad you could join us today. I'm Shannon. My background is elementary in the beginning, and then I was an elementary principal and then moved on to be a middle school principal, and have a real passion for deeper learning. And hopefully we can clarify any misconceptions of deeper learning today and help you move forward with your definition of what that's all about.
And I'm Abby Griffy. I too have a background in was an admin in elementary for about 4 or 5 years, and I've been at the central office and worked for Marshall County Schools for the last 16 years as instructional supervisor. And excited to be with you today with West Kentucky and leading the work of deeper learning across the state. So, welcome.
All right, we're going to jump right in, but I have broken this down into our standard. You can call this DL 1.1 or however you want to refer to this, but it is deeper learning. What is it and why is it important? And our goals for today is to intentionally plan to teach standards through utilizing the skills. Sometimes that's a misconception or a challenge of how do I teach through deeper learning skills alongside teaching my standards, and then understanding how deeper learning is tied to the framework for teaching and exemplary teaching.
Well, to start out today, first of all, in the chat, would you please just go ahead and put in what you believe is the purpose of education? That's a pretty wide open question, but if you would just take a minute and just in the chat room, tell us what you believe the purpose of education is today. I've got one that preparation for life experiences. Preparing students for their future. And as we know, their future is a little bit different than what probably our future looks like. Give students skills, experience needed to prepare for the future. So everybody's on the same track there, and we all agree that that is our charge, is to prepare them for the skills and experience they need for their future. So we're going to jump in with a quick video. Those of you that are with us, just to have a little discussion here about, somebody tell us, what do you believe what's the implication that has on education? Just unmute yourself and jump in.
Or feel free to put it in the chat if you feel more comfortable doing that.
I think it really says a lot about how we're going to have to teach kids to communicate and collaborate, because we're in a world of machinery and technology and things that are going to do a lot of things for us. And so we're going to have to really build those skills to help them to still be interactive human beings with and without the technology.
Thank you. Anybody else want to expand on that? Or well, this is going to take us right into the next thing. You're going to do a little bit of reading here, a little bit of work yourself. Do you want me to share my screen, Abby, or do you want to go ahead and move forward with sharing? Or
all right, is anybody go ahead?
Okay. After reading that article and then thinking about what you just saw in the video, what are those things? And I think Stephanie just touched on them a minute ago. There are some things, no matter how much artificial intelligence takes over our world, there are some things that our students, you can't live without human beings. So what are some things that are going to make our future and our students' future bright, even though a lot of it is going to be robotics from here on out? What are the human skills that our kids are going to need?
You can either put it in the chat or just unmute and tell us what you think.
I think just kind of reiterating what I mentioned before, a lot of what we're seeing post-COVID in the classroom was kiddos that are having a difficult time socializing and interacting because they were so set apart because of the technology. So I think just really helping them with empathy and working with others and those social skills and really hitting that social emotional learning, so they have those foundational skills, so that way when they're interacting with all the other forms of technology and stuff they'll deal with at their work, they can do both.
Right.
What do you think is the well, actually we'll get to this question later. I'm going to hold off and on asking that, but Shannon, you want to talk about our next? We've got a couple videos in this. We've got another one coming up, and Shannon's going to tell you about how we found this one, what was going on.
I was watching the Today Show, and of course this just hit home right immediately. So we started recording and then went on a search to find it. But we feel like it's really relevant to what our kids are going to be facing as they get into the workplace, as they apply for jobs. I think this sums it up as to why teaching skills are so important. The skills of communication, collaboration, critical thinking, the things that robots cannot take the place of. We are going to teach our students these things that you will see in this video. It's from the Today Show. We're all responsible for teaching standards. However, we're beginning to see that skills are equally as important as the standards. So, we feel like it's our responsibility as educators, just as it's our responsibility to teach standards intentionally, to track those standards, plan around those standards. It is our responsibility to do the same with the skills, so that we're preparing our kids to apply for jobs that a lot of employers are hiring as a skills-based. I know as a principal, the last few years I was a principal, my interviews were not necessarily around content. I might be hiring a science teacher, and sure, I wanted to know their science background, a little bit about what they were able to do with science, but I really wanted to know the skills. Are they a teacher that's going to get in there and dig deep? If they're lacking in some content knowledge, are they going to have the skills to collaborate with their colleagues, get along well, in order to move our school forward? So because of that, I feel like it's our responsibility to teach skills as well as standards, even though that's a tough charge, but it can be done through deeper learning.
And we're going to move right into this next slide. As a principal or a leader in the school, take a look at both of these columns and just ask yourself, when I go into classrooms, what am I seeing? What's the most evident in the classrooms that I go in? Is it column 1 or column 2? And you can see there's quite a bit of difference in 1 and 2. And I think we would all agree that column 1, that is not any kind of skill building in column 1.
Right.
So if those are the evidence that you're seeing in column 1, it's definitely not giving kids probably the opportunities that they need on a daily basis to build the skills of the future. And you can take a look at column 2 and see what are kids doing in that classroom or those classroom settings. And you can obviously tell that they would come away with many different skills if they're in classrooms that is the evidence of what's happening in the classroom. So they're thinking critically, they're making new arguments, they're communicating, and it relates to content and knowledge and experiences. And that's one of the big ones, is, are we giving kids the opportunities to build these skills while we're teaching content? So it's just a very different look at what should be happening in the classrooms.
Right.
Any comments or questions about
what you're seeing here, or what you're seeing in classrooms, or how to ensure that if you're seeing a lot of column 1, moving your teachers to column 2 so that your students have more voice and choice and interaction with their education?
Okay, we're gonna move on then. And Shannon, can you tell them a little bit about,
This next one, it is a short video. It is our last one, but we love these 3 videos and we feel like they really hit the point home. But this is Learn Like a Tiger. It's great. It's great to use with faculty and staff as a way to help them understand what deeper learning really is and the difference between just giving students the content versus them discovering and working with the content. Equate that to putting students in a variety of experiences that allow them to have productive struggle, not to just hand them the content, spoon feed them the content, ask them to regurgitate it in a test or some traditional type of assessment, but putting them in situations where productive struggle takes place. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute by giving opportunities for all students, your gifted learners, your lower socioeconomic learners, your special ed population, making sure all students have this kind of opportunity. But the big elephant in the room, I think sometimes with deeper learning is, oh my gosh, but I've got all these standards. And as teachers, we totally understand. We see those standards documents and we understand that long laundry list of things that you've got to get covered. So it's like, how can I possibly get it in? But it is possible, you know, with a lot of collaboration with colleagues, really intentionally planning things and planning out your standards and figuring out the best skills and ways in which to put students in situations where they interact with the content. But it's not like, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to teach some skills, but then I'm going to go over here and teach some content. It's allowing them to teach them simultaneously while you're teaching standards through different activities that you intentionally plan. But we talk about DEIB, diversity, equity. I'm not going to read all of this. I'm going to give you just a second to read that. And then at the end, you can have access to this presentation. There's a great blog from Dr. Glass about creating ecosystems in your classroom. But diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, that's a hard concept to get around and a big responsibility that we have with social emotional learning with our students. However, we have to ensure that our gifted students who maybe can just spit back that content easily or who come to your classrooms with that content already have the chance to do something different with that content. It's allowing our SPED kids who maybe who really struggle with content. You know, there's some skills and content they may never master. However, they may be able to shine with some skills. So it's really important that we value those gifts that they have that may be more in the skills category than the standards category. You know, allowing our socioeconomic kids who don't really have a lot of opportunities, you know, over Christmas breaks, over summer breaks, not a lot of going and doing and outside experiences. So we create those experiences for them in the 4 walls of our school or in our classroom. And that creates diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
and from there, we're going to jump into let Shannon kind of explain Socratic seminar. I'm not sure that we were planning on doing a Socratic seminar, but it is probably not ideal today with in this Zoom, but I'm going to let Shannon just kind of go through the ideas, and we're going to ask a few questions and see if anybody would be willing to participate or give us an opinion, but kind of talk about, this is one strategy that is very easy to have kids communicate and express themselves and have that respect and rapport in the classroom. So
yes, it's a lot of teachers have the trouble with, yes, I know what good questioning and discussion should look like, or that I should be doing that as it applies to even the, you know, questioning and discussioning on the framework for teaching. But it's like, how do I really get on there? Of course, teaching that respect and rapport, how to have discussions with people, with students, with each other. A Socratic seminar is just a great start, and letting them understand the ground rules and the expectations for what it really looks like to truly discuss something, have opinions, and even have disagreements in a respectful way. But if we were going to do a Socratic seminar, these would be the ground rules that we would set up. Of course, this will be an ongoing thing. It's great to start this and maybe not ever have any ground rules and see where students run with it and see the mess that they may make of it. But then going back and letting them kind of, what went wrong here today? How can we fix this? What would be a better way for us to get our opinions across. But there's also in this tiny URL a ton of great resources on holding kids accountable. So it's like, that's great, but I've got to get to my content. I've got to give them some tests and get some grades down in my grade book so that I can see that they've mastered the skills. But this is actually a way in which to hold kids accountable for their content through questioning and discussion. So we're going to throw a couple questions out there for you and hope that you all will discuss and participate.
Anybody, and you can again through the chat, or if you want to unmute and ask, but in a class, this would be typical of, since we're all adults and this is our topic, this is what we're asking, but are we currently preparing all kids for the future, their future and ours? And I think everybody knows that those students that we've got now really are our future. That's who's going to be leading us. So what do you think right now in Kentucky, in the nation? Are we really preparing kids for that future that we've seen in those videos and read about?
I'd have to say in pockets, and we're working towards that, and we're really focusing on skills and soft skills. It's now in the news, it's now very prevalent. And so now on the Today Show. So the more we're hearing about it, the more I think, like I said, in pockets, but overall, I think we could definitely do a better job. But I think the state of Kentucky is really headed in the right direction on all of this.
I agree. And I think that's the big kicker for everybody. Shannon and I have had lots of conversations about that. It's going to have to be all students, but usually schools and districts can, if you ask them, what are you doing to prepare kids for this kind of future? They do have things that are going on and opportunities, but when you go back and refocus them to, okay, but what are all kids getting? That's just not there. And so I think the big deal is, if you really want to get all kids, and it has to happen in a classroom level. And so it's to ensure that all kids are getting that. And granted, there are lots of great things going on, but they're not for all kids. And so what are you, I'm going to pick on Abby and Michelle. What are y'all thinking that we need to, some of the things that's going to help to prepare them, some of the strategies? I know you're working in deeper learning too.
Are you picking on me?
Either one of you.
Anybody.
I turned off my camera because my crazy dogs are in the background. Michelle's dog behaves better than mine. You can hear them. I really think that the commissioner believes in this work. I believe that he believes that we're preparing students for jobs that don't exist yet. And I am hoping that in the near future, we can see the product of those beliefs. Just that, assessment, state testing, things like that. I think teachers get so caught up in, I have to hit those standards, I got to do the state test, and they're just really afraid to get a little messy with all of this collaboration and creativity and the productive struggle and trying something that maybe doesn't work. And one thing we talked about in our session was like a green light culture, is that, from central office to principals to teachers to students, giving that green light culture that it's okay to try. And if it, I don't want to say fails, there's still going to be some learning that happened in that environment from the teacher or the student. So I'm hoping to see that we can embark on that adventure, I guess, together.
Do y'all feel that this is just something that we had a discussion about yesterday with a school district that we were working with, that do you feel that teachers, maybe even teachers, leaders, admin, I know we're trying to get the word out, was what our job is that the future is very different, but do you feel like that there are teachers that just don't know and need to be educated on this future that's going to require I mean, technology is going to be infused in every job some way. It's not, obviously we have to have the human part of it, but in some way, and I don't know. I'm just like, what can we do to educate them and to get them to see that I know what we're doing is making an impact, but is it making a big enough impact, I guess?
Michelle and I were just talking about that on Monday about, are we reaching the right audience sometimes, you know? So I think that is a challenge for us too. And, you know, is that something that the universities need to be brought in on the conversation? Because when they're in their education programs, is that something that they're learning? That's something they're talking about, preparing students with those soft skills?
And I wonder too, if we, many times, I wonder if we ask those kids that are, 5 years out of high school, maybe they went to college, maybe they didn't, maybe they went to a career. But I wonder if school districts called them, and, you know, we had to do that. We called kids a year out to see what they were 5 years out and said, you know what, did we prepare you? Did you feel like you had the skills to be prepared? And had data like that to really determine, and if they did, what helped you? If yes, I had that skill, and it may be that there was a CTE class that helped you. What did you learn in that? So that we had information that, like, not every student's going to take a CTE class.
Right.
Taking all
And
the time. Go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I agree with what Michelle was saying about how can we change, how can we shift that mindset to have a green light culture, but also I think it's important, like you were saying, Abby, I don't know if it's getting to the right audience. I don't know if the teachers are hearing this message, or if administrators are giving them permission to stop doing something else so they can do something that's better and more effective. I think a lot of them just feel overwhelmed. We hear that a lot in our area about, I can't add one more thing to their plate.
Right.
So I think being mindful of how can we get this information down to the people that are going to impact the students in the seats, but how can we also be mindful of telling them, what can you take off of your plate and what can you stop doing that's not the most effective, or that's just a time suck, you know, that can keep you from doing these really awesome things in your classroom.
I was just gonna say, like, piggybacking on all of you, just the support from the commissioner, support from the, you know, the state testing, support of the, you know, superintendents, the administration. And then that is, you know, then that will give those teachers that ability to go outside the box and think outside the box and give these kids the experiences that they need. And, you know, my hope is that this is one step in the right direction. I feel like it is, but are we getting to the right audience, and what other ways can we ensure that we're doing that without, like you said, Abby, adding one more thing to their plate or feeling like it's one more thing?
And showing them that deeper learning too is, you're doing some great things in your classroom, and there's some great things going on. So what can you do not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, not to change your instruction totally or add something additional to the current instruction you're doing, but taking what you're already doing and just tweaking it to make it a little deeper. It may not be to perfection, but if you get someone in that mindset of, okay, I'm going to keep walking this path and I'm going to keep trying, and I'm going to take what I'm already doing that I know has been successful in the past, and I'm just going to make it better. I'm going to intentionally throw in a skill there. I think too, that's not as scary for teachers when they see that. And then in a minute, we're going to go right into the framework for teaching. And it really is exemplary teaching in the framework. So it isn't anything new. I mean, it's what we've said for going on close to 10 years now, saying, if you want to be an exemplary teacher, yes, as administrators, we may have checked that exemplary box, but did we really read the framework, and was it exemplary? So just saying, this is your responsibility. And we used to always talk about teachers, we want you to live in accomplished. When the framework first came out, just shoot for accomplished. Then when you can visit exemplary, that's awesome. Well, why not shoot for exemplary all the time? You know, then if you drop down to accomplished at times, or really screw something up and you're developing, that's okay, but you're shooting for exemplary that's your star, that's your mark.
And just that slight shift, that just ever so slightly, what you're doing, and then just that slight shift. And I think that comes down to the coaching of it, to say, you all are doing an awesome job, but try this or shift it just a little bit. So
one major shift would be, and one thing that we've done for a long time is that when we come into, when we come into a classroom, it's not really about the teacher anymore. It's about what the students are doing. So if the teachers can internalize that, you know what, it's not about me. It's what I've planned for them to do. It's the planning that I've done. It's their conversations that matters. And so I think that is a shift, and that takes a long time, because that is not the education system that they were brought up in by any means. And, you often want to repeat and do what's been done to you, I guess.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that we're doing a book study, and something that we're planning for our sessions coming up, but we're doing a book study that Michael Fuller and engagement dive into deeper learning. I can't even think of the name of it right now. But one of the things that in their checkpoint that lots of our folks in this have said that we're going to have to address, because it's actually, it's not a misconception, but it's the fact they are like, okay, I can't do this alone. Me as one teacher, and if y'all are probably like us with teacher cohorts in there, me and one teacher, it takes a community to do this. And so that's something we're going to have to address, because that one, I don't know if they understand that. No, you can do it in your classroom, but certainly, are they going to get the skills from having you 1 year and that they're going to need? Probably not, but to really focus on them as you are the leader of this effort. And this is something that, it just takes a few to make a movement start. So I hope we can get that through with them next week, that, you are going to be the movers and the shakers and the trailblazers in your school to do this. So
it's not about waiting for someone else to get on board or to have a group of teachers. It's about, let's just start with me, and then watch it grow.
But
and
two,
taking the lead.
Principals, I know principals are probably on here. We have concern. Teachers will say, but if our principals are not for this, then, and so that is too, them going back and educating principals. And when you said, are we training the right audience? I wonder that as well sometimes. That's questions that we've got. We're going to go ahead and
Go right.
thank y'all for your comments. We appreciate that. This is, I'm not sure why I did this, but you can look at this. This leads right into what Shannon was talking about, but these are exemplary statements that appear in the framework for teaching. You can see how many times it talks about students, and for students to be able to students formulate, students formulate many questions, initiate topics. I mean, they've got to have these skills that we're talking about with deeper learning in order to even be able to do these things that we're expected to do for kids. Students, here's one that's, I'm gonna have
They
to move.
contribute, they contribute to the content, extend to explain. Well, they're there to explain something. You've got to critically think, and then you've got to communicate and collaborate possibly.
And also in that, students have a pretty good self-awareness, self-esteem, confidence in being able to do that. So there's a lot of prerequisites, I guess, for teachers to, think about what, if you're just solely pushing content in a traditional way, students, it's the way that you're pushing and the opportunities you're giving them that allow students to do this. They initiate the inquiry. They contribute to the exploration of important content.
They intellectually engage and reflect and consolidate their understanding. Boy, that's some critical thinking and problem solving right there.
And so that to us is the exemplary model here just screams skills with teachers. With students.
Yeah, I think if you go through the framework and you go through all domains 2 and 3, which are the observable domains, when an administrator is observing a teacher, you can just check all the places where you say, students are going to have to communicate in order for me to be an exemplary teacher. Students are going to have to contribute and have voice and choice. And then those teachers that are like, yeah, but we talked about, I think, I'm not sure if it was Abby or Michelle that mentioned the chaos that sometimes occurs when teachers are trying some of these things that can occur in the classroom. But if that then goes back to domain 2, that's your classroom environment. And so maybe instructionally, you're not quite there yet, but you're really wanting to set your classroom up, that classroom environment, so that you can go into some successful deeper learning and some successful collaboration. So spend some time in that framework, but that's principals working with their teachers on understanding, because it really can, deeper learning can really just start from the framework, and they can see that it's not anything additional, it's just an expectation. But I also know when I would observe teachers, I tell this story, so some of you may have heard that, a teacher would say, I'm coming to observe you tomorrow, and they'd say, well, I'm really not teaching tomorrow. That didn't mean they weren't doing anything, but I'm really not teaching tomorrow, so it's not a good day. I said, well, what's going on in your classroom? They say, oh, well, their kids are working on some projects and they're doing, and I'm like, no, that's the best time for me to come observe you. If I have to sit and script, and I can just, it's easy for me to sit in the back and just script everything that you're saying and you're doing, that's an easy observation, and you're not going to hit exemplary at all. But if I have to go around and try to capture what kids are doing and the conversations they're having, and it's difficult for me to observe you, then that is going to get you to the exemplary column. So training teachers and administrators on the framework and using that as a tool.
And it's often we've talked about in this is that if you haven't done a lot of work in the framework, if you haven't really dug, if leaders haven't really dug into that framework and internalized, what does that look like in the classroom? What do those statements actually look like? And really think, okay, when I walk in, this is what I should see. I should see students working in groups. I should say, if they've not internalized that, then I just know from being an administrator and principal before, it's easy to, sometimes that requires some hard conversations when people are used to just being exemplary. And maybe we were giving them credit or sometimes, a lot of times it's easier to just like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to mark them this way than to have a hard conversation about it.
Or you're in the past, your star teachers, you just automatically go to, let's just count them exemplary, but really let the framework, observe and evaluate them, not you subjectively, so as much as you can tie it back to that is important. But it's also sometimes when you throw those exemplary statements up, it's like, okay, that's great. And I get it, but I don't know how. I mean, that is just mind blowing. It can be difficult. So spending some time, in PLC saying, okay, so let's take one area of a framework like student engagement in the exemplary column, and let's just brainstorm. What does that look like? And what are some ways, what are some intentional lessons that you can plan or projects you can do or whatever to get you there? So having those conversations with teachers among each other is really helpful too. But this is just a statement, you can take a picture of it, have it. It is kind of your elevator speech. So a lot of times when we get cornered, principals or us as deeper learning coaches or whomever's on this Zoom is, okay, what is deeper learning? So it's kind of like you kind of pitter patter around and don't really know what to say. Of course, we have our definition that we put together for deeper learning with the kids at the top. But this is something that sort of just I came up with about how I would explain deeper learning to someone, but use that how you wish.
And one of the things for everybody on here, we use this analogy all the time too, as well, when thinking, especially thinking with probably leaders. And what does this hat mean for your kids when they get that and they're walking across this? What does that mean for your district? What are you pretty much guaranteeing your community, your people, that when they walk across the stage on graduation with this hat on, we are telling you that our kids are prepared for blank. Yeah. And not just some kids, but what are all kids that you're ensuring them they are prepared for this? And I think that's something that we really need to consider and think, what does in our school or in our school system, what does this mean for kids? And if it means if there's different meanings for kids, well, if you took this, it means you're going to go out and get a job doing this, or you're going to be going to college in this. But we have to start looking at that differently. That hat has to represent a certain thing, and it's got to be for all kids in there. And so we've had lots of great conversation about with some districts about, what do you want that to mean for your kids, and what does your community know it means? So, all right, we are going to wrap it up. Shannon's going to we're going to go back to our standards and goals for today.
But we talked about what is deeper learning. So hopefully today, after watching the videos and reading some of the things that you read, and maybe reading that last definition, you can kind of get in your head, what is and why is it important? And I think you all listening today and some of the comments that we've heard, we understand why it's important. But the goals intentionally plan to teach standards through utilizing the skills. That's what we want teachers to do. That's the goal for teachers. And then understanding how deeper learning is tied to the framework for teaching. So,
and if there's anybody on here that this is intriguing to, or they want to start this, it is super important that we're spending a whole year with our cohort of teachers on really the why. We get into some other things, but it's all going back to the why we need to do it. And in order to do that, what is your mindset have to be? And many of you know, I mean, if you've got the mindset, then, and you truly believe in that mindset, you will figure out the actions that you need to take to make that a reality, your mindset. So a lot of times I've even caught myself in, oh, here's my mindset on this. But when I look at my actions, well, gosh, my actions are not representing my mindset
Right.
here. So that's something that we're really trying to work with teachers and leaders that are coming to our trainings on about, what is your mindset? Why is it important? And to really think deeply about what is it that's happening in our schools. And, if we need to change, what are we going to do differently?
Because I think if you start as an administrator, if you start with the mindset and you really work with the mindset, get everybody understanding the mindset, hopefully, and then begin changing some mindsets, the how of deeper learning will come together, because that mindset, it will be natural. They can't teach another way. Their mindset is around it. So they're constantly thinking, well, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to try this. And a lot of people think, well, deeper learning is project-based learning. Well, that's just a tool or a strategy that, yes, if you're a great teacher that can run projects, and that is the way in which you want to facilitate the skills and the content, great, go for it. But there's lots of ways to do deeper learning. But I think teachers, when they have that mindset, those will come naturally.
All right. Well, any questions, comments, feel free to, Christy, you noticing, is there anything in the chat room we need to talk about? Be pretty good, it looks like, maybe. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying, just a shift in the educator prep program was a comment, and how that could be a great change that we need.
Definitely. And I don't know if since we're just coming out of districts, and instructional supervisor, one of my jobs was new teacher training. That was one of the things I took on every year. And very seldom, it really probably depended more by maybe where they got their training at, but many times we had to retrain to the mindset of this, even for new people coming out. And so that is that's really time consuming, and I just know you could hit the ground running if they had this mindset coming
They were
out.
ready to go.
Yeah, but
giving you ideas and sharing ideas with other people.
But it takes us a couple years to work on that when they come out, for sure. But our contact information is on the screen, and if you need us for anything, we would love to help you. So
Hey, Abby.
Yes.
Hey, it's Todd Davis.
Todd, how are you?
I'm all right. So the ed prep is part of my world, and I would love to have some conversations around some of this work. So it is a hot topic. There are several issues with ed prep where their accreditation requirements really push a misalignment, I guess is a way to say it. So trying to figure out how we can do some things to move more towards this, but then, you know, I still struggle with how we measure success versus the way we want to implement what we know is quality teaching. And so just trying to figure out those hurdles.
Yeah, we struggle with that too. I know that's but
That's right. Yeah, that's what it's part of this presentation.
but I would love to discuss that more with you because that has been, we've discussed it with some local, back when we started this, we discussed that, but it is I think some are doing work in this, but yeah, it's a shift for sure in teacher prep. It would pay some districts so that really have this going on. I know now, you know, you can kind of do your own teacher prep in your district, so it should be an undertaking, but it definitely needs to change. Something needs to happen. So anytime you want to talk about that, I'd love to.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you.
All right, perfect. So
It may be an all-day conversation. Or multiple.
right. All
Which
right.
is fine.
Well,
Well, you
thank
can have access to any of our presentation or any of the resources embedded in it. If you just want to email us, we'll be glad to share the link with you to
Yep.
this.
Yep.
Yeah, will do.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a great day.
Thank
Bye,
you all. We
guys.
appreciate
Great
it.
job.
All right. Bye-bye.